The salvage beacon flickered weakly against the star-dusted void, its dying pulse barely registering on Marcus Chen's scanner. Another derelict ship floating in the graveyard sector, probably stripped clean by pirates years ago. He almost ignored it entirely, but something about the energy signature nagged at him. The readings showed unusual biosigns, faint but persistent. Marcus guided his repair vessel closer to the abandoned craft. The ship looked ancient, its hull scarred by micrometeorites and solar radiation. Strange symbols covered its surface, definitely not human in origin. As a freelance mechanic working the outer rim, he'd seen plenty of alien vessels, but this one felt different. The design was elegant yet alien, with flowing curves that seemed to pulse with an inner light. His scanner picked up movement inside the derelict. Something was alive in there. Marcus frowned, checking his equipment again. The bio readings were small, possibly an animal. Pirates sometimes left creatures behind when they couldn't sell them. He'd rescued a few over the years, mostly exotic pets that wealthy colonists had abandoned. The airlock took several attempts to cycle. The alien technology was sophisticated but foreign to his human understanding. Finally, the heavy doors groaned open, releasing a puff of stale atmosphere. Marcus stepped inside, his boots echoing in the empty corridors. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls, and he could hear a faint sound echoing through the ship. It was crying. Marcus followed the sound deeper into the vessel, past abandoned quarters and empty cargo holds. The alien architecture was beautiful but unsettling, with organic curves that seemed to breathe in the dim light. Finally, he reached what appeared to be a detention area. Heavy energy barriers had once secured this section, but they were offline now. In the center of the room, a small cage sat on the floor. Inside, a tiny creature huddled against the bars. It looked like nothing Marcus had ever seen before, yet something about it reminded him of the cats from Earth's archives. It had soft pearl-white fur that seemed to shimmer with an inner light, large emerald eyes that held an intelligence beyond its apparent age, and delicate features that spoke of genetic engineering. The creature looked up at him and mewled pitifully. That's when Marcus noticed the restraints. Alien shackles designed for something much larger had been crudely adapted to hold the small being. The metal bands around its tiny legs had chafed the skin raw, and dried tears stained its fur. Someone had abandoned this innocent creature here to die slowly of starvation and loneliness. Marcus felt rage building in his chest. He'd seen cruelty before, but this was different. This was deliberate torture of something helpless and young. The creature couldn't be more than a few months old, whatever species it belonged to. Its eyes followed his movements with desperate hope, as if it understood that rescue might finally have arrived. The cage lock was alien technology, but Marcus had dealt with similar systems before. His tools made quick work of the mechanism, and soon he was reaching inside to gently lift the small creature. It didn't struggle, instead pressing against his chest and purring with a sound like distant thunder. The alien kitten was surprisingly warm, and he could feel its rapid heartbeat against his palm. Examining the shackles proved more challenging. They were made of some kind of smart metal that adjusted to the wearer's movements, preventing removal without the proper key. The cruel irony wasn't lost on Marcus. Technology advanced enough to prevent escape, used on a creature too young to even understand captivity. He would need his workshop to remove them safely without injuring the kitten further. As he prepared to leave with his unexpected passenger, Marcus noticed something else in the cage. A small data crystal, hidden beneath what looked like bedding material. He pocketed it quickly, sensing it might contain important information about the creature's origins or the identity of whoever had committed this atrocity. The kitten seemed to understand it was being rescued. It nestled against Marcus's jacket, occasionally looking up at him with those incredible emerald eyes. Despite everything it had endured, trust came easily to the young creature. That fact made Marcus even angrier at whoever had done this. Back on his ship, Marcus set up a temporary habitat for his new companion. He had some basic medical supplies and emergency rations, but he wasn't sure what the creature would eat. To his surprise, it seemed interested in standard protein supplements, though it clearly needed something more specialized for proper nutrition. As they traveled toward the nearest station, Marcus found himself talking to the kitten. It listened intently, tilting its head at his words and responding with gentle purrs and chirps. The intelligence in its eyes was unmistakable. This was no ordinary pet. Someone had abandoned a sentient being to die alone in the void. The data crystal would have to wait until they reached port. Marcus didn't have the equipment to decode alien information systems safely, but he suspected it would reveal something important about his passenger's identity and the circumstances that led to its abandonment. For now, he was content to provide food, warmth, and the companionship the creature had been cruelly denied. The kitten fell asleep in a makeshift bed Marcus constructed from spare clothing. Even in sleep, it seemed to glow faintly, as if bioluminescence was part of its natural physiology. Marcus watched over it as they traveled through hyperspace, already forming plans. First, he would remove those horrible shackles. Then he would find out who was responsible for this cruelty. And finally, he would make sure they understood that humans took a very dim view of anyone who hurt innocent creatures. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone crossed the line of basic decency in the presence of humanity. This little kitten had found more than just a rescuer. It had found someone willing to fight for justice on its behalf. The trading post orbited a dim red star, its spinning structure casting long shadows across the docking bays. Marcus guided his ship into berth 17. The alien kitten perched on his shoulder like it belonged there. Over the 3-day journey, they had bonded quickly. The creature, which Marcus had started calling Nova because of its luminescent fur, seemed to understand basic commands and showed remarkable problem-solving abilities. Dr. Sarah Kim ran the only xenobiology clinic on the station. She was one of the few humans working this far out on the rim, and Marcus trusted her expertise. When he walked into her clinic carrying Nova, her eyes widened with professional curiosity and personal concern. "Marcus, what in the 7 systems do you have there?" she asked, setting down her equipment scanner. Nova chirped at her voice, ears perking up with interest. "Found this little one abandoned on a derelict ship. Someone shackled it and left it to die." Marcus gently placed Nova on the examination table. "The restraints are some kind of adaptive alien tech. I was hoping you could help remove them without causing injury." Dr. Kim approached slowly, letting Nova sniff her hands before attempting to examine the creature. "These aren't just restraints," she said after a few minutes of careful observation. "They're punishment devices. See these neural interface points? They were designed to cause pain if the wearer tried to escape or disobey commands." Marcus felt his jaw clench. The cruelty was even worse than he'd imagined. "Can you remove them safely?" "It'll take time, but yes. The interface has to be disconnected gradually, or we risk permanent nerve damage. This little one is going to need several sessions." Dr. Kim's voice carried professional calm, but Marcus could see the anger in her eyes. "What species is it? I've never seen anything quite like this." Before Marcus could answer, the clinic door chimed. 3 alien figures entered, their scaled skin marking them as Zephyrians. The lead figure wore ornate robes and carried himself with obvious authority. His companions looked like enforcers, their hands resting on weapon hilts. "Human mechanic," the leader said, his voice carrying the artificial precision of a universal translator. "You have taken something that belongs to us. Return it immediately." Nova immediately cowered behind Marcus, a low whimper escaping its throat. The recognition in its eyes was unmistakable. These were the ones who had heard it. Marcus stepped protectively in front of the examination table, his hand moving instinctively to the plasma cutter on his belt. "I found an abandoned creature on a derelict ship," Marcus replied carefully. "If it belongs to someone, they did a poor job of caring for it." The Zephyrian's eyes narrowed. "The creature is a failed experiment. It was scheduled for disposal. Your interference is theft of hegemony property." Dr. Kim stepped forward, her scanner still recording Nova's bio readings. "This is a sentient being, not property. The neural development patterns show clear signs of sapience. Whatever you did to create it, abandoning it to die constitutes attempted murder under galactic protection protocols." "Humans and your primitive concepts of rights," the leader hissed. "This creature is genetically engineered bioart, designed for the pleasure of our aristocracy. It failed to meet specifications and was disposed of according to our laws." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Bioart? You created a living, thinking being for entertainment?" The project required intelligence for proper interaction with its owners. Unfortunately, the specimen developed beyond acceptable parameters. It began showing signs of independence and emotional complexity that made it unsuitable as a pet. Disposal was the only logical option. Nova was trembling now, pressed against Marcus's back. The translator couldn't convey the full meaning of the alien's words, but their tone and posture spoke of contempt and ownership. Dr. Kim continued scanning, her face growing paler as she read the results. Marcus, she said quietly, these readings show signs of deliberate genetic modification, not just physical enhancement but neurological acceleration. They created an artificial species designed to mature rapidly and bond completely with its owners. This kitten has the emotional capacity of a much older being. The lead Zephyrian made an impatient gesture. Enough discussion. Return our property or face legal action through the hegemony courts. Your human opinions on the matter are irrelevant. Actually, Dr. Kim said, straightening to her full height, they're not. This station operates under Terran Commonwealth protection protocols. Any being showing signs of sapience has the right to claim asylum from persecution. And genetic torture definitely qualifies as persecution, Marcus smiled grimly. You heard the doctor. Nova here just claimed asylum. That makes it a Commonwealth citizen under protection of human law, and we have very specific laws about what happens to people who hurt kids. The aliens exchanged rapid words in their native language. Nova suddenly perked up, chirping urgently at Marcus and pointing toward the lead Zephyrian's belt. Marcus followed its gaze and spotted a familiar-looking device, the key to the restraints. Dr. Kim, Marcus said casually, how long would it take to remove those shackles if we had the proper removal key? About 30 seconds, she replied, understanding immediately. Interesting. And I suppose those devices cause constant low-level pain until removed. Continuous neural irritation designed to ensure compliance. Basically torture. The Zephyrians were backing toward the door now, realizing the conversation had taken an unexpected turn. But Marcus was faster. His plasma cutter appeared in his hand with practiced ease, not quite pointing at anyone but definitely visible. Now, I'm just a simple mechanic, Marcus said conversationally. But I know a thing or two about tools. That little device on your belt there looks like it might be the tool I need to help my new friend. Why don't you hand it over? You cannot threaten hegemony officials. The leader protested. Who's threatening? I'm negotiating. See, in human culture, when someone tortures a child, we tend to get emotional about it. Emotional humans are unpredictable. Some might even do crazy things like follow whoever hurt the kid back to their ship and have a conversation about proper childcare. The enforcers reached for their weapons, but Dr. Kim's voice stopped them cold. I should mention that this clinic is equipped with full security recording. Everything you've said about genetic experimentation, torture devices, and attempted murder of a sentient being has been transmitted to Commonwealth authorities. Your diplomatic immunity won't cover war crimes. After a long moment, the lead Zephyrian slowly removed the key device and placed it on a nearby counter. This does not end here, humans. The hegemony has long memories. So do we, Marcus replied. Especially when it comes to protecting kids. The aliens left, their threats hanging in the recycled air. Dr. Kim immediately began working on Nova's restraints, the key device interfacing smoothly with the alien technology. Within minutes, the cruel shackles fell away, revealing raw patches of skin underneath. Nova looked at its freed limbs in wonder, then up at Marcus with an expression of pure gratitude. It leaped into his arms, purring so loudly that the clinic's equipment registered it as a minor seismic event. The data crystal revealed secrets that made Marcus's blood boil. Dr. Kim's translation equipment had finally cracked the Zephyrian encryption, and the contents were worse than either human had imagined. Nova sat quietly in Marcus's lap, occasionally pointing at specific symbols on the screen with remarkable understanding for such a young creature. These are production logs, Dr. Kim said, her voice tight with controlled anger. Nova wasn't the first. They've been creating these enhanced beings for decades. Look at these numbers, hundreds of creatures, all designed to be companions for wealthy Zephyrians. Marcus scrolled through the records, his free hand gently stroking Nova's fur. The kitten seemed to understand they were learning about its origins. What happened to the others? Disposed of when they became too independent or emotionally complex. The Zephyrians wanted intelligent pets, not sentient beings with their own thoughts and feelings. When the creatures started showing signs of genuine personality, they were considered defective. The records showed Nova's designation as Batch 247, Specimen 12. Its genetic template included enhanced intelligence, emotional capacity, and bonding instincts. But unlike previous specimens, Nova had developed faster than expected, showing signs of self-awareness at an unusually young age. The scientists had marked it for immediate disposal. There's more, Dr. Kim continued. They didn't just abandon Nova randomly. The ship was a testing facility. They were studying how long-enhanced creatures could survive in isolation. Nova was part of a psychological experiment. Nova made a small sound and pressed closer to Marcus. The kitten's intuitive understanding of their conversation was both remarkable and heartbreaking. It knew it had been created as property, abandoned as refuse, and saved by pure chance. A soft chime announced an incoming message. Commander Jessica Torres of the Commonwealth Patrol ship Defiance appeared on the communication screen. Marcus had worked with her before, and her reputation for protecting civilians was legendary throughout the Outer Rim. Marcus, we received Dr. Kim's report about the Zephyrian situation. I'm en route to your location with a full investigation team. The hegemony has officially demanded return of their property, but Commonwealth law is clear. No sentient being can be owned. How long until you arrive? Marcus asked. 6 hours. Can you keep Nova safe until then? Before Marcus could answer, the station's alert system began blaring. Red lights flashed throughout the clinic as the automated voice announced incoming ships. Through the viewport, they could see Zephyrian vessels emerging from hyperspace, not just one or two, but an entire squadron. They're not waiting for legal proceedings, Dr. Kim observed grimly. Marcus stood, gently placing Nova on the examination table. Commander, we have Zephyrian ships approaching. Looks like they're planning to take Nova by force. Negative. You're on a Commonwealth-protected station. They can't legally board without permission. But Torres's expression suggested she knew legal niceties wouldn't stop the Zephyrians. The station's communication system crackled to life. Attention humans. You have 1 hour to return stolen hegemony property or face the consequences. This is your only warning. Nova had gone very still, its luminescent fur dimming with fear. Marcus picked up the kitten again, feeling its rapid heartbeat. What kind of consequences are we talking about? Dr. Kim checked her emergency protocols. This station has basic defensive systems, but nothing that could stop a military squadron. Most of the inhabitants are civilians. They're betting we won't risk innocent lives over one small creature, Marcus realized. Classic hostage situation. But Nova suddenly became animated, jumping from Marcus's arms to the data crystal interface. Its small paws moved across the control surface with surprising dexterity, accessing files that hadn't appeared in their initial review. What is it, little one? Dr. Kim asked, watching the screen fill with new information. The files Nova accessed contained detailed schematics of Zephyrian ships, including defensive capabilities and crew layouts. More importantly, they showed communication frequencies and command codes. Nova looked up at them expectantly, as if waiting for them to understand the implications. Nova memorized the Zephyrian systems. Marcus breathed. It was on their ships, saw their technology, learned their protocols. Dr. Kim was already analyzing the new data. These command codes are current. If Nova's right, we could access their communications, maybe even disrupt their coordination. Commander Torres's image leaned forward. Marcus, are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? Nova wants to help. It understands those ships better than we do. Maybe we can level the playing field. The next hour passed in frantic preparation. Nova worked alongside the humans, its enhanced intelligence proving invaluable in understanding Zephyrian technology. The kitten's memory was perfect, recalling every detail of the ships it had been imprisoned on. Station Security Chief Rodriguez joined their planning session. The Zephyrians are demanding access to the docking bays. I've told them no, but they're threatening to board by force. Let them try, Marcus said, watching Nova interface with the station's defensive systems. The kitten had discovered that Zephyrian technology shared common protocols, probably to ensure their bioart creatures could interact with any ship in their fleet. Nova chirped urgently, pointing at the screen. It had found something important in the ship's schematics, a weakness in their shield harmonics that could be exploited by the station's mining lasers. The little genius is right, Dr. Kim confirmed. If we modulate the mining equipment to these specific frequencies, we can disrupt their shields long enough for Commonwealth ships to arrive. Commander Torres's voice carried new hope. My task force is 30 minutes out. If you can keep those ships busy until then, we'll handle the rest. Marcus looked down at Nova, who was still working intently at the interface. What do you say, partner? Ready to show your creators that their failed experiment is smarter than they thought? Nova looked up with those brilliant emerald eyes and made a sound that could only be described as determined. The little creature that had been designed as a toy, abandoned as trash, and rescued by chance was about to become the key to its own liberation. The station's mining lasers began their deadly song, and in the distance Zephyrian shields flickered and failed. Nova had struck the first blow in its war for freedom. The Zephyrian squadron reeled under the unexpected assault. Their ships, designed to intimidate civilian populations, hadn't been prepared for coordinated resistance. Station sensors showed 3 vessels with failing shields and another completely dead in space, its crew scrambling to restore power. Nova worked frantically at the control interface, its small paws dancing across alien symbols with increasing confidence. The kitten had found additional system vulnerabilities, each more devastating than the last. Dr. Kim watched in amazement as Nova accessed command protocols that should have been impossible for any non-Zephyrian to understand. "How does it know all this?" she asked Marcus. "They used it as a test subject," Marcus replied grimly. "Nova probably lived on these ships for months while they ran their experiments. It learned by watching, remembering everything." The lead Zephyrian vessel attempted to dock forcibly with the station. Warning klaxons blared as the alien ship's cutting beams began slicing through the outer hull. Station security rushed to intercept the boarding party, but everyone knew they were outgunned. Nova suddenly stopped working and looked directly at Marcus. Its expression was unmistakably urgent, and it began making rapid chirping sounds while pointing at the communication array. "I think it wants to talk to them," Dr. Kim realized. "Can we establish a direct link?" "Already working on it." Dr. Kim's fingers flew over the controls. "Nova, if you can understand me, use this interface to communicate." The kitten immediately began working with the translation matrix, its enhanced intelligence allowing it to bridge the gap between species. Within moments, Nova's voice emerged from the speakers, speaking perfect Zephyrian. The effect on the attacking ships was immediate. Every vessel stopped moving as Nova's words reached their crews. The cutting beam ceased, and for a moment the void around the station fell silent. Marcus couldn't understand the words, but Nova's tone conveyed incredible emotion. The kitten was speaking with the voice of all its kind, all the creatures that had been created, used, and discarded. Dr. Kim's translation software struggled to keep up, but fragments came through. "You made us to love you, then punished us for loving. You gave us minds, then called us defective for thinking. You created children, then abandoned them to die alone." The response from the Zephyrian commander came through the speakers, harsh and dismissive. Nova's fur began to glow brighter, and its reply carried the steel of absolute determination. "We remember everything. Every cruelty, every abandonment, every friend who died in your laboratories. The humans showed us what we were denied: compassion, protection, family. Now we choose them over you." Suddenly, new signals appeared on the station sensors. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace throughout the system. But these weren't reinforcements for the Zephyrians. The vessels were small, fast, and broadcasting Commonwealth identification codes. Commander Torres's voice filled the communication center. "All Zephyrian vessels, this is Commonwealth Task Force 7. You are ordered to withdraw immediately from Commonwealth space. Any hostile action will be met with appropriate force." The Zephyrian commander's response was predictably arrogant. "Commonwealth dogs, you have no authority here. Return our property or face the consequences." Nova made a sound that might have been laughter. The kitten accessed another system interface and began transmitting data directly to the Commonwealth ships. Marcus watched in fascination as Nova shared everything it had learned about Zephyrian ship vulnerabilities. The battle, when it came, was shockingly one-sided. Commonwealth fighters swarmed through the Zephyrian formation, their weapons precisely targeting the weak points Nova had identified. Within minutes, the alien squadron was disabled, their crews broadcasting surrender signals. But the real shock came when additional ships began arriving. These weren't human vessels, but alien craft from a dozen different species. Each ship carried survivors, creatures like Nova that had escaped or been rescued from Zephyrian laboratories. "Nova," Dr. Kim said softly, "you're not alone." The kitten's response was a sound of pure joy. Through the communication system, voices began joining Nova's transmission. Creatures from across the galaxy, all speaking as one to their former captors. Commander Torres's ship docked with the station, and she arrived with a full diplomatic team. The tall, scarred woman, took one look at Nova and knelt down to the kittens. Level. "So you're the little one who started a revolution?" she said gently. Nova looked up at her with those remarkable emerald eyes and chirped something that the translator rendered as, "I just wanted to go home." "Where is home?" Torres asked. Nova looked around the room at Marcus, Dr. Kim, and all the humans who had risked their lives to protect it. The kitten's answer came without hesitation. "Here, with them." The aftermath moved quickly. The surviving Zephyrian crews were taken into custody to face charges of war crimes and genocide. The data Nova had provided revealed the full scope of their genetic experimentation program, including evidence of thousands of murdered creatures. More importantly, the rescued survivors began sharing their own knowledge. Each species created by the Zephyrians had unique insights into alien technology and culture. What the Zephyrians had intended as disposable property had become an intelligence network spanning the galaxy. Nova remained close to Marcus throughout the proceedings, but the kitten was changing. Its luminescent fur had grown brighter, and its intelligence continued to develop at an astounding rate. Dr. Kim estimated that within months, Nova would be intellectually equal to any adult of any known species. "What will you do now?" Torres asked Marcus as they prepared to leave the station. Marcus looked down at Nova, who was currently engaged in a complex technical discussion with 3 different alien survivors. "Whatever Nova wants to do. It's not my pet or my property. It's my friend." Nova overheard and bounded over to Marcus, climbing up to perch on his shoulder as it had during their first journey together. The message was clear. Whatever adventures lay ahead, they would face them together. The galaxy had underestimated both the little alien kitten and the humans who protected it. That mistake would cost the Zephyrian hegemony everything they had built on the suffering of innocent creatures. Justice was coming, and it had luminescent fur and emerald eyes. 3 months after the rescue, Nova had grown into something magnificent. Still small enough to ride on Marcus's shoulder, the kitten now possessed intelligence that astounded even Dr. Kim. Nova could interface with any known computer system, spoke 17 languages fluently, and had designed improvements to Marcus's ship that increased efficiency by 40%. They were heading to Terra, humanity's homeworld, where Nova would testify before the Galactic Council about Zephyrian war crimes. The journey through Commonwealth space had been a revelation for both of them. Every human station they visited welcomed Nova as a hero, and the kitten basked in the attention while remaining humble about its role in the liberation. "Marcus," Nova said, using the translation collar Dr. Kim had designed, "I've been analyzing human behavior patterns, and I'm curious about something." "What's that, little one? Why did you risk everything for me? Your species had no prior obligation to mine. The logical choice would have been to return me to the Zephyrians and avoid conflict." Marcus considered the question while checking their navigation systems. Nova often asked probing questions about human nature, trying to understand the beings who had saved it from certain death. "Because it was the right thing to do," Marcus said finally. "Humans have a saying. We judge civilizations not by how they treat the powerful, but by how they protect the helpless. You were helpless, scared, and alone. That made protecting you the most human thing I could do." Nova was quiet for a long moment, processing this explanation. The Zephyrians would call that sentiment a weakness. Maybe, but look how things turned out. Your rescue led to the liberation of hundreds of other creatures and exposed crimes that spanned generations. Sometimes what looks like weakness is actually strength in disguise. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Commander Torres. Her image appeared on the main screen, expression grim. "Marcus, we have a problem. Intelligence reports suggest the Zephyrians are planning something desperate. They've lost face badly, and their entire power structure is collapsing. Word is they're planning to make an example that will discourage other liberated creatures from testifying." Nova's fur flickered with nervous energy. "What kind of example?" "They're targeting Earth. If they can't reclaim their property, they want to destroy the humans who dared to interfere. Our sensors show a massive fleet building at their border fortress." Marcus felt ice in his veins. Earth was heavily defended, but the Zephyrian hegemony had resources that dwarfed even Commonwealth military power. A direct assault would cause casualties in the millions. "How long do we have?" Marcus asked. "Their fleet will reach Sol System in 5 days. The Commonwealth is mobilizing everything we have, but the numbers don't look good." Nova suddenly became very still. Commander, may I see the intelligence reports on their fleet composition? Torres looked surprised but transmitted the data. Nova's eyes moved rapidly as it absorbed information that would take human analysts hours to process. Within minutes, the kitten had identified something others had missed. They're using older ships, Nova announced. Vessels from the period when I was created. I know these systems intimately. What are you thinking? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew. The same vulnerabilities that let us defeat them at the station exist in their entire older fleet. But someone would need to get close enough to broadcast the command codes directly into their network. Torres shook her head. Impossible. Their security is too tight. Any ship trying to approach would be destroyed long before getting within transmission range. Nova looked directly at Marcus with those brilliant emerald eyes. Not any ship. A ship carrying one of their own created beings. They would never expect their property to turn against them so completely. The plan that emerged over the next few hours was audacious, dangerous, and probably insane. Nova would use its genetic signatures to infiltrate the Zephyrian command ship, accompanied by Marcus in a modified stealth pod. Once inside, Nova could access their central computer network and transmit the vulnerability data to Commonwealth forces. It's suicide, Dr. Kim protested via secure transmission. Even if you get inside, how do you escape before the fleet is destroyed? We don't, Nova said simply. But Earth survives, and that's what matters. Marcus was about to object when Nova climbed onto his shoulder and whispered something only he could hear. The kitten's plan was more sophisticated than it had revealed to the others. Nova had been studying Commonwealth technology as intensively as Zephyrian systems, and it had found a way to turn the enemy's own weapons against them. The modified stealth pod was barely large enough for Marcus and Nova, packed with every piece of infiltration equipment the Commonwealth could provide. As they approached the massive Zephyrian fleet, Marcus felt his heart hammering against his ribs. Hundreds of ships stretched across the void, their weapons already charging for the assault on Earth. Nova's genetic identification codes worked perfectly. The command ship's automated systems recognized the kitten as hegemony property and granted them docking privileges. Marcus marveled at the alien vessel's size and complexity as they made their way through corridors that Nova navigated from memory. The central computer core is just ahead, Nova whispered. Once I interface with it, I'll have complete access to their network. They encountered their first guards outside the computer center. Zephyrian soldiers, alert and well-armed. Nova looked up at Marcus and nodded. Time for the second part of their plan. The kitten stepped forward and spoke in perfect Zephyrian. The guards' weapons immediately lowered as they recognized what they thought was a recaptured piece of property. Nova continued talking, its voice carrying subtle harmonics that Marcus had never heard before. The guards collapsed, unconscious but alive. Nova had used sonic frequencies specifically calibrated to Zephyrian physiology, another gift of its enhanced genetics. Impressive, Marcus murmured as they entered the computer core. I learned from the best, Nova replied, placing its paws on the interface. Humans taught me that protecting family is worth any risk. The kitten's consciousness merged with the Zephyrian network, and across the fleet, ship systems began reporting impossible readings. Nova had done more than just transmit vulnerabilities to the Commonwealth. It had turned the entire fleet into a weapon against itself as war. Commonwealth forces poured out of hyperspace to engage the confused and crippled Zephyrian fleet. Nova looked up at Marcus one last time. Thank you for showing me what it means to have a home worth fighting for. The final battle for humanity's future was about to begin, with a small alien kitten holding the fate of worlds in its luminescent paws. The Zephyrian fleet descended into chaos as Nova's sabotage spread through their networks. Ships that had been perfectly coordinated minutes before now fired on each other, their targeting systems corrupted by the kitten's elegant virus. Nova had turned their own technology against them with surgical precision. Marcus watched in amazement as his small companion orchestrated the destruction of an entire armada. Nova's paws moved across the interface with the confidence of a master pianist, each keystroke sending another command through the enemy fleet. The kitten's enhanced intelligence had found patterns in Zephyrian systems that even their own engineers didn't understand. Nova, we need to get out of here before someone realizes what's happening, Marcus urged. Almost finished, Nova replied, its voice strangely calm. I'm downloading their complete database. Every creature they ever created, Every experiment, every location where survivors might still be held. This information could save thousands of lives. Alarms began blaring throughout the command ship as Zephyrian officers realized their fleet was attacking itself. Emergency bulkheads sealed automatically, trapping Marcus and Nova in the computer core. Through the reinforced walls, they could hear running footsteps and shouted orders. "We're trapped," Marcus said, checking his equipment. "The emergency seals are too strong for my cutting tools." Nova's fur flickered with nervous energy, but its eyes remained focused on the interface. "I can override the locks, but it will take time. Time we might not have." The sound of plasma cutters echoed through the corridor outside. The Zephyrians were trying to burn through their own security doors to reach the computer core. Marcus estimated they had maybe 10 minutes before the aliens broke through. "There's something else," Nova said quietly. "I found records of my origin. Not just my creation, but my genetic base. The Zephyrians didn't design me from scratch. They used an existing species as a template." "What species?" "One they drove to extinction 50 years ago. My people were called the Luminari. We lived on a peaceful world until the Zephyrians arrived, seeking subjects for their experiments. They took our children, studied our genetics, then wiped out the rest to prevent interference." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. "Nova, you're not just a created being. You're the last of your species. Not anymore." Nova's voice carried quiet satisfaction. "I've found genetic samples in their databases. Complete DNA sequences for dozens of luminary individuals. With the right technology, my species could live again." The plasma cutters were getting closer. Molten metal began dripping through microscopic gaps in the door seal. Nova worked faster, its small body trembling with effort as it processed massive amounts of data. "Upload complete," the kitten announced. "All Zephyrian records are now in Commonwealth hands. Every hidden laboratory, every secret experiment, every survivor they tried to hide." Marcus grabbed Nova as the door finally gave way. Zephyrian soldiers poured into the room, their weapons trained on the unlikely pair. The lead officer spoke rapidly in his native language, and Nova translated. "He says we're under arrest for terrorism and destruction of military assets. Standard punishment is immediate execution." "Tell him he's welcome to try," Marcus replied, shifting Nova to a safer position. But before anyone could act, the ship shuddered under massive impact. Through the viewport, they could see Commonwealth fighters swarming around the command vessel. The sabotaged Zephyrian fleet was in full retreat, those ships still capable of movement fleeing toward their own territory. Commander Torres's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "Attention, Zephyrian vessel, you are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately or face destruction." The Zephyrian officers looked uncertain. Their fleet was gone, their command structure in shambles, and they were facing the full might of an enraged Commonwealth military. The lead officer made a gesture that Marcus recognized as surrender. Nova began speaking in Zephyrian, and Marcus was surprised to hear the tone of authority in the kitten's voice. The alien soldiers actually stepped back, some of them dropping their weapons entirely. "What did you tell them?" Marcus asked. "The truth, that I am the last Luminari, heir to a world they destroyed. Under their own laws, that makes me a being of high status. They're required to show respect to the nobility of conquered worlds. Even in defeat, the Zephyrians were bound by their own twisted customs." The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. The creature they had created to serve was now commanding them through their own legal system. Commonwealth Marines breached the command ship moments later, led by Commander Torres herself. She took one look at the scene and shook her head in amazement. "Let me guess, Nova talked them into surrendering." "Something like that," Marcus replied, gently stroking the kitten's luminescent fur. "It also downloaded their entire database. We now have the locations of every illegal laboratory in their territory." Torres smiled grimly. "The Galactic Council is going to love this. With this evidence, we can demand full access to Zephyrian space for rescue operations." Nova looked up at both humans with those remarkable emerald eyes. "There's one more thing. The genetic data I found includes other species they experimented on. Creatures like me, but different. We could build a sanctuary for all of them, a place where enhanced beings could live free from persecution." "Where were you thinking?" Torres asked. Nova was quiet for a moment, then looked directly at Marcus. "Earth, if humans will have us. I know it's asking a lot, but we trust you more than any other species. You've shown us what family means." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. From a scared, abandoned kitten to the savior of multiple species, Nova had grown into something extraordinary, but at its core it was still the frightened little creature he had rescued from a derelict ship, looking for a place to call home. "I think we can arrange that," Marcus said softly. "After all, family takes care of family." As the Commonwealth fleet secured the surrendering Zephyrians and prepared for the journey home, Nova curled up in Marcus's lap and began to purr. The sound filled the cabin with warmth and contentment, a small reminder that even in the vastness of space, the simplest gestures of love could change the course of history. The last luminary was going home, and it was bringing hope for an entire galaxy of lost children with it. 2 years later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of New Haven Station, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. The orbital habitat circled Earth's moon, a marvel of human engineering designed specifically as a sanctuary for enhanced beings rescued from Zephyrian laboratories. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see the planet that had become synonymous with freedom throughout the known galaxy. Nova sat beside him, no longer the tiny kitten he had rescued, but a magnificent adult luminary. The creature's luminescent fur had developed intricate patterns that shifted with its emotions, and its intelligence had grown to encompass multiple scientific disciplines. But those same emerald eyes still held the warmth and trust that had defined their relationship from the beginning. "The Altarian delegation just docked," Nova reported, reading the station displays with casual ease. "That makes representatives from 47 different species all here for the anniversary celebration." Marcus smiled, remembering those first desperate hours when survival seemed impossible. Now New Haven hosted over 3,000 rescued beings from dozens of worlds, each finding their own path to healing and purpose. Some worked as researchers, others as artists, and many as advocates for creatures still trapped in illegal laboratories throughout the galaxy. Dr. Kim approached them, carrying a datapad filled with the day's reports. She had accepted the position of Chief Medical Officer for New Haven and had never looked back. The Council's verdict came through this morning. The Zephyrian hegemony has been officially dissolved, and their territories placed under Commonwealth protection. The last of the hidden laboratories was liberated yesterday. "How many survivors?" Nova asked. 837. "They'll be arriving next week for processing and rehabilitation." Nova's fur flickered with joy. Each rescue was personal for the last luminary, who had made it their mission to ensure no enhanced being would ever face abandonment again. The creature that had once been considered a failed experiment was now the unofficial leader of an entire movement. Commander Torres materialized on the deck via hologram, her image transmitted from the bridge of her flagship. "Marcus, Nova, I wanted to let you know personally, the Senate just approved funding for 12 additional sanctuary stations. We're going to need more space than Earth orbit can provide." "Any word on the Luminary Restoration Project?" Marcus asked. Torres smiled. "Dr. Kim's team has successfully created the first generation of pure Luminari from the genetic samples Nova recovered. 23 healthy children, all showing signs of Nova's enhanced intelligence but without the artificial modifications. They'll need guidance from someone who understands their heritage." Nova was very still for a moment, processing the magnitude of what Torres had just announced. After 50 years of extinction, the Luminari would live again. The species that had been destroyed to create living toys would reclaim their place among the stars. "I'll need to prepare educational materials," Nova said finally. "They should know about their homeworld, their culture, everything the Zephyrians tried to destroy." "Already ahead of you," Dr. Kim said, gesturing to her datapad. "I've been working with the Cultural Anthropology Department to reconstruct Luminary society from archaeological data. We've got language, art, music, even traditional foods." Marcus watched Nova process this information, seeing the emotions play across its luminescent features. The kitten he had rescued had grown into something magnificent, but more importantly, it had found purpose beyond mere survival. Nova was giving its people a future. The celebration began that evening with delegates from across the galaxy gathering in New Haven's central amphitheater. Species that had never communicated before found common ground in their shared experiences of liberation. The diversity was staggering. Beings of crystal and energy, others of metal and thought. Creatures that defied every category of life humanity had previously imagined. Nova had been chosen to speak first, representing all the rescued beings. As it approached the podium, Marcus felt a surge of pride that had nothing to do with their species difference. This was his friend, his family, addressing the representatives of half the galaxy. 2 years ago I was property, Nova began, its voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. A failed experiment, abandoned to die alone in the void. I had no name, no identity, no hope of survival. Then a human mechanic named Marcus Chen decided that my life had value. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. Nova's story had become legend, but hearing it from the source still carried incredible power. Marcus didn't rescue me because of what I might become, or what I could offer in return. He rescued me because it was right. That simple act of compassion changed the course of galactic history. It proved that strength isn't measured by the power to destroy, but by the willingness to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Nova paused, its gaze finding Marcus in the crowd. Humans have a saying that you judge a civilization by how it treats its most vulnerable members. By that measure, humanity stands as the greatest civilization this galaxy has ever known. They opened their homes, their hearts, and their world to creatures they had never seen before, asking nothing in return but the chance to help. The applause was thunderous, coming from beings whose species had warred for millennia, but who now stood united in their respect for human compassion. Marcus felt tears on his cheeks, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had grown from one simple act of rescue. Today marks not just our liberation, but our commitment to ensure no being ever faces the cruelty we endured. New Haven is more than a sanctuary. It's a promise that intelligence without compassion will never again triumph over love. As Nova concluded its speech and the celebration continued around them, Marcus found himself standing alone with his friend on the observation deck where their day had begun. Earth hung in the viewport like a blue jewel, surrounded by the lights of ships from 100 worlds. Any regrets? Marcus asked. Nova considered the question with the same thoughtfulness it brought to every important matter. Only one. I regret that my people won't see their homeworld as it was before the Zephyrians came. But perhaps that's for the best. They'll grow up here on Earth, learning what family really means from the species that taught me. Marcus reached out and gently stroked Nova's luminescent fur, just as he had during those first frightening days. Think the galaxy is ready for a new generation of luminary raised by humans? Nova's purr filled the observation deck, a sound of pure contentment that had become the unofficial anthem of New Haven Station. I think the galaxy is about to discover what happens when you combine luminary intelligence with human heart. The Zephyrians created us to be property, but humans taught us to be family. Our children will carry both legacies forward. In the distance, another ship was docking with the station, probably carrying more rescued beings seeking sanctuary. Marcus and Nova would meet them tomorrow, offering the same compassion and protection that had started this incredible journey. The mechanic and the rescued kitten had become something greater than either could have imagined. They had become the foundation of hope for an entire galaxy. As they watched Earth turn slowly in the void, surrounded by the lights of freedom, both human and luminary knew that their greatest adventures still lay ahead. After all, there were always more beings who needed rescue, more families waiting to be formed, and more proof needed that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could literally save the universe.